This is the continuation of the armor that rejected every alien until it found a human. If you haven't watched it yet, check the description or click the card icon above. James Carter had once been the most feared and revered warrior in the galaxy. He had wielded Aegis Prime, the armor that defied all logic, the weapon that no species had been able to command. But that was a lifetime ago. Now he was just James Carter, husband, father, and humble farmer. His days were no longer filled with battles, councils, or warlords scheming to take his armor. Instead, they were spent tilling soil, repairing the house, and arguing with Arya about whether or not their son should be allowed to climb the roof. "Eden," James said, arms crossed as he watched his 10-year-old son standing precariously on the roof's edge. "Remind me again what part of stay on the ground you didn't understand." Eden grinned, his golden eyes gleaming with mischief. "The part where you said it out loud." James sighed, rubbing his temples. He had fought against some of the most advanced species in the galaxy. He had survived orbital bombardments and assassins, but nothing had prepared him for the chaos that was raising a child. Arya, his wife, a former diplomat from the Eridani people, chuckled as she watched from the doorway. "You were just like him when I met you." "I was not." "You tried to wrestle a warbot for fun, James." James pointed at Eden. "That's different. He's reckless." "Gee, I wonder where he gets it from," Arya said, smirking. James shook his head, but couldn't stop the small smile forming on his lips. For 13 years, life had been peaceful. He had walked away from the galaxy's stage, buried his past, and hidden Aegis Prime where no one would ever find it. He had everything he could ever want, and he had no idea it was all about to be ripped away. Across the galaxy, in the dark reaches of space, the Sovereign Order gathered. For centuries they had tried, and failed, to recreate Aegis Prime. Their scientists, engineers, and warriors had dissected every ancient text, every piece of data recovered from the old research stations. And finally, they had succeeded. Well, almost. What they created were lesser versions of the original armor, stronger than any natural warrior, resistant to most weapons, nearly indestructible, but still, they were flawed. They lacked the intelligence, the adaptability, the raw willpower that Aegis Prime had displayed with James Carter. But they were still powerful enough to conquer worlds, and that was exactly what they intended to do. The leader of the Sovereign Order, High Warlord Threxis, a towering four-armed warlord encased in one of the first functional copies of Aegis Prime, stood before his council. "It is time," Threxis growled, his voice reverberating across the chamber. "We take what is ours. We rebuild the galaxy in our image." The war had begun, and one of their first targets? A small, peaceful colony on the outskirts of the galaxy, the home of James Carter. The sky turned black as warships descended. Eden was in the fields when he heard the first explosion. He turned toward the horizon and froze. The village, his home, was on fire. He saw his father running toward him, Arya close behind. James grabbed Eden by the shoulders, his eyes full of urgency. "Take your mother and run," James ordered. Eden shook his head. "Dad, what's—" Another blast shook the ground, and suddenly they were surrounded. Warriors in black armor, glowing with the same eerie energy that his father had once spoken about. Their helmets were smooth and blank, and when they spoke, it was through a distorted, inhuman filter. "James Carter," one of them said, "the Sovereign Order demands your surrender. Hand over the armor." James clenched his fists. "I don't have it." Lies. He did have it. He just refused to use it. But these warriors didn't care. "Then you die," the leader said. They attacked. James fought like a demon reborn. Even without his armor, he was a warrior unlike any other. His bare hands shattered helmets. His speed was inhuman, his reflexes honed from decades of battle. But there were too many. Eden could only watch in horror as his father fell. His mother screamed, running to James, but a plasma blade cut through her back. Eden froze as his mother collapsed beside him, blood pooling beneath her. She grasped his hand, her eyes full of pain, and whispered, "Find the armor." Eden's world shattered. And then he ran. Eden didn't remember how he found the bunker. His feet moved on instinct, guided by his mother's last words. It was deep underground, hidden beneath layers of old stone and reinforced steel, a place his father never spoke about. The doors hissed open, revealing a single object bathed in blue light. Aegis Prime. The moment Eden stepped inside, the armor reacted. The entire room hummed with energy, and the armor, dormant for decades, suddenly came alive. Light pulsed across its surface, and the moment Eden reached out, the metal flowed like liquid, wrapping around his arm, his chest, his body. He felt power surge through his veins. But more than that, he felt something else. The armor recognized him. James Carter's blood. But stronger. Better. For the first time in its existence, Aegis Prime spoke. "You are not your father. You are more." Eden took a breath. His hands clenched into fists. He would burn them all. Eden Carter had never known war, but war had found him. The armor wrapped around him like a second skin, its sleek metallic plates pulsing with raw energy. He could feel power flowing through him, making him faster, stronger, something more. He stood in the ruins of his home, the acrid scent of fire and death filling the air. The Sovereign Order's forces had come and gone, leaving destruction in their wake. His mother was gone. His father, gone. And the last thing his mother had told him? Find the armor. Now, he had it. And he knew exactly what to do next. The Sovereign Order would burn. Tracking them was easy. They weren't hiding. The warlords of the Sovereign Order were arrogant, reveling in their newfound power, spreading destruction with their false copies of Aegis Prime. Eden found their first warship in orbit over a desolate moon. The entire fleet was celebrating their latest conquest. Warriors clad in blackened armor feasted and drank beneath the glow of their flagship's neon lights, believing themselves untouchable. They never saw him coming. Eden dropped from the sky like a comet, smashing through their shields as if they weren't even there. The first warrior turned, just in time to see Eden's fist shatter his helmet. A second enemy lunged at him, but the armor reacted before he could think. A blade formed from his gauntlet, slicing clean through his opponent before retracting as if it had never been there. Eden didn't stop. He moved like a storm, cutting through their ranks with terrifying precision. The armor, his father's armor, was adapting to him. It didn't just protect, it learned. And with every warrior he cut down, it grew faster, stronger, deadlier. The last survivor crawled backward, armor cracked, helmet shattered. His breathing was ragged, his body broken. Eden loomed over him, eyes cold, voice steady. "Who leads your order?" The warrior coughed up blood. "High Warlord, Threxis." Eden's jaw clenched, the name of the man who sent the attack. "Where is he?" A ragged laugh. "He will crush you. You think you are strong? You think that armor makes you invincible? You are just a shadow of—" Eden raised his hand. The armor responded instantly. A surge of energy obliterated the warlord in an instant. No hesitation, no mercy. Eden turned toward the stars. Threxis was next. In the aftermath of his first real battle, Eden took a moment to assess himself and the armor. His father had wielded Aegis Prime as a weapon of defense. But for Eden, it was more. With every battle, the armor adapted, unlocking abilities that hadn't existed before. His reaction speed had doubled. He could move faster than he had ever thought possible. The armor had weapons inside it, ones that hadn't existed for James Carter. It could shift, grow, change forms, becoming whatever Eden needed in the moment. And worst of all, it wasn't done. The armor was still unlocking itself. Eden had no idea what he was becoming. But if it made him strong enough to kill Threxis and wipe out the Sovereign Order, he didn't care. Eden's next target was Kravos Prime, a world that had once been a peaceful trading hub. Now, It was another conquest under the Sovereign Order. Eden descended from the sky, landing in the city square as shockwaves of energy rippled from his armor. The enemy rushed him immediately, their numbers overwhelming. They thought their false armors made them gods. Eden showed them what a true god looked like. With a sweep of his arm, energy tendrils shot from his gauntlets, grabbing warriors mid-air and slamming them into the ground. His armor shifted, forming a plasma cannon on his shoulder that obliterated entire squadrons in seconds. By the time the dust settled, the battlefield was silent. Eden stood alone, victorious. The Sovereign Order was afraid now. They had believed their imitations were enough, that their warriors were unstoppable. Eden had proven them wrong. And now, High Warlord Threxis had only one choice left. He challenged Eden directly. A final battle. One warrior against another. The false god against the real one. Eden accepted, because when this was over, the Sovereign Order wouldn't exist anymore. Dravak 9 was a world built for war and war alone. The sky was black with storm clouds, the ground a wasteland of cracked stone and ancient ruins. This was the place where generations of conquerors had fallen, and today it would be Threxis's turn. Eden Carter stood alone at the center of the battlefield, the Aegis Prime pulsing with energy around him. His father's armor, but something more now. It had evolved with him, growing stronger after every battle. Opposite him, Threxis stood on a towering platform, his red-black imitation of Aegis Prime burning with unstable energy. And behind him, an army of sovereign warriors, each clad in their own lesser copies of the armor. Threxis raised his arms. His voice echoed across the battlefield. "Eden Carter, you have stolen what belongs to the Sovereign Order." Eden's eyes narrowed. "The armor never belonged to you." "It belonged to no one," Threxis growled, stepping forward. "Until now." Eden cracked his knuckles. "So you finally admit you're just a thief?" Threxis snarled. Then he lifted his hand, and the entire Sovereign army charged. Eden launched forward like a missile, his armor shifting mid-flight. His gauntlets extended into twin blades, cutting through the first wave of warriors before they even touched the ground. A plasma blast shot toward him from the left. His armor absorbed it and fired it back. His father had always used Aegis Prime for defense. Eden was a weapon. He tore through dozens of sovereign soldiers, their imitation armor shattering against the real thing. And yet, they kept coming. Because this wasn't just a fight. It was a test. Threxis was waiting, watching, studying, looking for weaknesses. Eden gritted his teeth. He wasn't going to give him any. The battlefield fell silent. And then, the ground shook. Eden's breath hitched as 10 figures stepped forward from the ruins, each one clad in a suit of armor that looked like Aegis Prime. But they weren't copies. They were something more. And then, it hit him. These weren't just warriors. They were chosen, hand-picked by the Sovereign Order. 10 warriors, 10 suits of perfected armor. Eden had fought armies before, but never warriors like these. Threxis smiled. "Meet the ones who will kill you." Eden didn't wait. He rushed forward, faster than thought, his blade clashing with the first of the chosen warriors. The impact shook the entire battlefield. The warrior matched his strength, matched his speed. Eden barely dodged a second strike, only to be hit from behind. A third warrior slammed into him at full speed, sending him flying through a stone wall. He landed on one knee, coughing. They weren't just strong, they were learning from him. Eden exhaled slowly, flexing his fingers. "All right," he muttered. "Let's see how fast you really are." His armor shifted. The Aegis Prime pulsed, its power surging to meet his will. And when Eden moved again, the battlefield exploded. The second time, the Chosen weren't ready. Eden vanished from sight, moving at a speed even they couldn't follow. He ripped through their defenses, tearing apart armor that should have been indestructible. The first Chosen warrior fell, his armor crushed. The second dropped moments later, a shockwave sending him flying. The third barely had time to react before Eden drove his fist through his chest plate. One by one, They fell, until only one remained, the strongest, their leader. And Eden realized this warrior wasn't just strong, he was familiar. And then the helmet retracted, and Eden's blood ran cold, because staring back at him was a human. Eden froze. The last chosen warrior, the strongest among them, was not an alien. He was a human. His armor was nearly identical to Eden's, but darker, twisted. "You," Eden whispered. The warrior smirked. "You're not the only Carter left in this galaxy." Eden's world shattered. Threxis laughed. "I never needed your father's armor," the warlord said. "I just needed his bloodline." Eden clenched his fists. "You're lying." The warrior tilted his head. "Am I?" Eden didn't care anymore. If this was real, if there was even a chance that this was his own flesh and blood, then he had to end it. The two warriors collided, and the entire planet shook. Blow after blow, their armors shifted, adapted, countered. They were evenly matched. But there was one difference. One thing Eden had that his opponent never would. He wasn't fighting alone. Aegis Prime was with him, and the armor had already made its choice. With a final strike, Eden drove his fist straight through the heart of his opponent's armor. The warrior staggered, coughing blood. For the first time, his eyes showed fear. Eden caught him before he fell. "Who are you?" Eden whispered. The warrior smiled weakly. "Someone who was never meant to be." And then he was gone. Eden let him go. The last of the chosen 10 had fallen, and only Threxis remained. Threxis saw his entire army fall, his 10 chosen warriors destroyed, his ultimate creation, his final hope, erased, and he knew he had lost. Eden turned toward him, the Aegis Prime shining brighter than ever. Threxis fled, but there was nowhere left to run. Eden caught him in seconds, grabbed him by the throat, and lifted him into the air. "You stole my father's legacy," Eden said. "You destroyed my home." Threxis clawed at his gauntlet, but it was useless. Eden's fingers tightened. "You took everything from me." Threxis gasped. "Please." Eden didn't let him finish. He crushed his throat and dropped the body. It was over. The Sovereign Order was gone. Eden stood alone on the battlefield, surrounded by ruins and ghosts. He had won. But he felt nothing. Aegis Prime whispered, "This is not the end. This is the beginning." Eden looked toward the stars. There were more wars to come, more threats to stop before they even began. And that's when he knew he could never let this happen again. Eden Carter had won the final war, but victory felt hollow. He stood on the ruins of Dravak 9, surrounded by the wreckage of fallen warriors, the shattered remnants of the Sovereign Order. The galaxy was safe, for now. But deep inside, Eden knew this would happen again. There would always be another warlord, another tyrant seeking power, another Sovereign Order waiting in the shadows. Eden clenched his fists. Not this time. He would make sure no empire like this ever rose again. And to do that, he needed more than just himself. He needed guardians. Eden traveled to the far reaches of the galaxy, searching for the strongest, the bravest, and the most loyal. He found warriors on dying worlds, soldiers who had fought wars no one remembered. He found scholars who knew the history of power, who understood that knowledge was its own weapon. He found survivors, people who had suffered under the Sovereign Order and had vowed never to let it happen again. And when he was done, he had 10 warriors, the new chosen. But this time, they weren't warlords, they weren't conquerors, they were defenders, and each one would be given something greater than just a suit of armor. Eden forged 10 new suits, not mere copies of Aegis Prime, but something different, something unique to each warrior. Each guardian was given an armor crafted to fit their strength, their skill, their purpose. And together, they would become the protectors of the galaxy, the first and last line of defense, the guardians of the universe. Eden divided the galaxy into 10 regions, each under the watch of one guardian. Each guardian had their own territory to defend, their own people to protect, and when war threatened to return, they would be there to stop it. No longer would planets be left helpless. No longer would civilizations fall to tyranny. No longer would the galaxy wait for a hero, because the Guardians were watching, and Eden Carter was leading them. But Eden knew something the others did not. His father had wielded Aegis Prime for years, and now it was his. But no warrior could fight forever. Aegis Prime had chosen 2 Carters. Would it choose another? One day, Eden would be gone, and when that day came, the galaxy would need a new Grand Guardian. So he would prepare for that future, and when his time ended, someone else would take his place. Because legends didn't die, they became something greater. The galaxy had changed forever. The sovereign order had fallen. The Guardians had risen. And at the heart of it all, standing on a fortress at the edge of the universe, was Eden Carter. Watching, waiting, protecting. Because as long as he stood, the galaxy would know one undeniable truth. Aegis Prime had not been defeated. It had become something more. It had become the will of the Guardians. And as long as they existed, the universe would never fall to tyranny again.